What's up, man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, how you doing?
Awesome. Pretty
I had
good.
I had the weirdest dream last night. I dreamt I was in front
About
of a
me?
crowd and this woman shouted at me, "You can't interview Ethan." And I said, "Why not?" And then she told me that you had killed an endangered bird. And
Dang,
I
how did
woke
she
up
find out about that? I
and I woke
actually,
up and
go
I was
ahead,
like,
go
"Can you
ahead.
do that?"
Uh, I actually killed a hummingbird once.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're endangered, but I felt so bad because it was my grandmother's. She had a whole bunch of hummingbirds flying around her patio, and I shot one whenever I was just a kid with the BB gun, and I felt so bad.
Oh man.
Yeah, sad story.
I remember my neighbor did that and I came over and we were both little kids and he was like crying. And I was like, "What's up?" And he was playing like shooting, and he didn't realize he was gonna kill it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't think you're that good of a shot until
Yeah,
you are.
cool, man. So, uh, right now you're taking a little break from the YouTube channel.
I'm slowly getting back into it, you know.
Okay.
I'm building up. I've got a few videos currently being edited and worked on, you know,
Nice.
shooting and stuff like that still happening.
Um, I thought it was dope the first time I saw it because like I had known you at work or we had worked on Kipo together, and then I saw one. I was like, "Oh, he's doing like a character."
Mm.
How did you how did you get started, and what made you think of the angle you take on it?
Well, it was just a niche in a market that wasn't being filled, you know. It was um there's a most artists are very like I don't want to offend you and trying to go easy on you, you know,
Yeah.
and very apologetic and a lot of introverts. And I was very introverted too, so I was like, I gotta get out of this.
Yeah.
I'm like in my shell and stuff, and if I'm gonna be pitching things someday, and if I'm gonna be talking to people, I need to know how to present myself. So might as well just like make a fool of myself for everybody to see, so I can just kind of get over myself and be like, nobody really cares, you know. Nobody
Yeah.
cares how stupid you make yourself look.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a niche within a market. I was like, you know, there's not a lot of tough love type of teachers out there, and some people gravitate towards that. Everybody learns different, you know. So
Yeah.
I was like, if somebody were to teach like that on YouTube, I would watch them, and I know a lot of my
Mm.
friends would watch them, and my friends aren't even artists, so I know they would still watch that type of personality.
I grew up drawing with this old animator. At the time, he was like 85 when I was in high school, and he animated on Snow White, and he always had a cigar, and he was from New York, and he was always like, I think I met him when I was in like sixth grade or something. And he would just be like, "What the fuck is that? You call that a fucking drawing?" Like, he was,
That sounds about right. Yeah.
and he would tell me the old stories when they worked on like the old Donald Duck cartoons and the old Disney cartoons, and he said like they'd be, he's like everyone there was like, "Look at the fucking duck! What the fuck is that?"
This guy sounds old school.
Yeah, man. And he used to tell me like there'd just be a line of animators coming in the door, like a line of young animators coming in the door, and then just getting hammered and drunk and just becoming alcoholics and going out the other door.
Oh.
And he's like, nobody lasted more than like 4 or 5 years because they all just kind of became alcoholics.
Do you think because of him?
Probably. It was probably
That's
his berating them.
that's pretty interesting. That sounds like a Rick and Morty episode, like a Rick character. I love it.
He's
Is
just
it?
trying to drive everybody mad.
Yeah, you still talk to him?
No, he died, man. Because he was like
Oh shit.
89. This was like the 90s.
Oh okay.
So that was a long time ago, you know. But that was the dude who taught me how to draw when I was younger.
And you were one of the people who turn into an alcoholic, or
No, he was just trying to warn me. He's like, if you go into animation, don't drink.
oh,
I think he's just trying to warn me like the culture.
mm.
But yeah,
Can I can I ask you some questions about storytelling and writing and
yeah,
stuff? It's stuff that I'm really interested about.
let's do it.
I'm mainly wondering, do are there like things that you went through as a kid that go into your storytelling and writing these days? Any specific like stories or something that
Yeah.
happened to you, you know?
I mean, the most obvious is my dad is a scientist and an inventor, and like some of
Mm,
those conversations, like how many parsecs are in a light year, those are just things that like someone would ask over the Thanksgiving table. So a lot of the family dynamic is very similar to my upbringing. Um,
would he test you on these things, or was he just
no,
making conversation?
he's just like he skipped a bunch of grades, and he's one of those dudes who like he'll be sitting there and go, huh, and he'll just write something down. You're like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just trying to calculate how many possible combinations of license plates there could be. Like
Mm,
he's just one of those kind of dudes. Um, so
dang.
that kind of stuff went into it. I also had a weird like my mom was raised in a offshoot of the Mormon church.
Mm,
Like not the happy go lucky wear a tie, knock on your door Mormon, but like weird cult Mormon. Uh, so I didn't really put two and two together until I thought about this later. But like I mean, definitely we thought about that for Dr. Amelia, because I remember as a kid seeing these preachers and stuff screaming like, "Oh, if women work, they're gonna go to hell," or they used to think black people were cursed by God. It was like crazy garbage.
yeah.
And so definitely Amelia was and her father were like the epitome of that upbringing, you know?
How old were you when you kind of first realized? I was raised Baptist. I was raised in Southeast Texas.
Yeah.
So it was until maybe 16 to 19 is whenever I started being like, a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is not making sense, and it's kind of crazy, and it's making people more hateful than anything, and separating people more than anything.
I I was definitely in sixth grade when I was a little traumatized from it in the terms of like I got old enough where my mom couldn't physically grab me and drag me to the car,
Yeah.
and she literally couldn't get me to the church. So
Oh,
because I mean it's like you don't when you go to a Baptist might be a little different, but when you go to a place where people are screaming and speaking in tongues and like doing weird magical shit, like
yeah.
you don't want to be there. uh, and so at around sixth grade, I was like, dude, I am not going to this shit. And then she made me go to my grandparents' church. They're from the South. They're from Arkansas.
Mm.
I think it was just like a Presbyterian church or something, right? And I went to that for a while, and I don't think I was 20 until I just, and this is just a personal thing. I sat down and read the Bible from the beginning to end, and I just was like, I don't like this. I'm done. And just tossed it. I'm like, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah. Dang. That's it does. I was raised first Catholic and then Baptist, and to see the differences in those in Catholic for me, I mean, I'm not really against or for any religions. I'm kind of like I'm open to anything at this point. You
Yeah.
know, I'm just kind of listening at this point. But anyway, when I was raised like, kind of Catholic, looking back, going into Catholic churches is very interesting because it's like feels very. I mean, it is a cult of sort where everybody stands at the same time and says the exact same thing and sits at the same time, and the type of, I mean, yeah, just the action of doing it. Nothing against these religions.
Yeah, I do want to say I when I first became atheist, I was very staunchly like anti-religious.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people are right when they leave it because they're a little angry. You're a little upset by maybe things you've personally dealt with. And then over the years, I kind of learned to have more of a respect for people are religious. Like I would never say anything to anybody who chooses any religion, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely, there's not a Sunday that goes by that I'm not so happy I'm not at a church.
Yeah. Yeah. I've just come to accept the fact that like I don't know anything. Like I'm not for or against anything. It's just like I'm still not quite like I can't even fathom,
Yeah.
the truth. I don't even understand.
I love, um, like, because I was raised that way, I am obsessed with reading up on everything. So like I love watching people who believe flat earth. I love watching people that are like super into Illuminati conspiracies and like lizard people. Like I'm just obsessed with all of that stuff. But
My
I don't
my
believe in any of it.
okay. My fiance's father he believes in flat Earth, so it's pretty interesting talking to him.
Yeah.
It's
I have a
pretty
buddy I
cool.
used to draw with, or we were, I think we were friends on one of the message boards back in the day, and he got so into it. Like he's like the Earth is not round flat; it's square flat.
Oh, he's a square flat earther.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, he's
He's
a
a square.
subculture of a subculture.
And again, I don't want to be making fun of this stuff. Apologies if
No,
it's that way,
no,
but
I think for me it goes back to like I don't know anything. Honestly, it could be flat, it could be round. I'm accepting the fact that I really don't know, and I'm not gonna really my life's not gonna revolve around it. I'm just making
yeah,
cartoons, so I'm just a cog in the machine, bro.
I think you got to look how it affects your personal feelings. So like for some people, it makes their life better.
Yeah,
I noticed for me when I left it, it was like a huge weight off my shoulders, and I felt this huge relief for like 20 years. I was like, oh man, I never thought I'd be that happy as when I just got rid of it. So like for me, I was happy to leave it.
yeah. Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah. Um,
Uh, any childhood traumas then that you're willing to speak about that have shaped you into your, writing and storytelling capabilities?
I mean, I think the 7 hours of church on Sunday, the daily Bible studies every single day, that was the most trauma.
Well, yeah.
But other than that, like my parents were cool. Like my dad wasn't. He, like I said, he was a scientist. He didn't believe in any of that stuff.
Hmm.
It was just my mom was into it. So in a way, I kind of had a little bit of a balance. Like he just shut up about it. He never said anything. He didn't want to upset my mom.
Yeah.
But you could kind of tell, like, wait, he doesn't go to this church. But
Wow.
so at least it was a little kind of eye opening.
Has your dad seen Kipo?
Uh, I think so. I have a 10-year-old sister,
Hmm. Oh,
so
wow.
yeah. I it sucks because like I talked to my dad in person a lot before COVID, but I never really like chat with him on the phone. So it's kind of a bummer the whole COVID thing. We can't visit.
Hmm.
So you're working on a show too, developing something.
Mm-hmm.
Are you pulling a lot of inspiration from your childhood or from your own life?
Uh, well, not for the show that I'm working on at Titmouse, but definitely for the stuff that I'm writing and stuff, like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a lot. Um, a lot of it is me growing up thinking that I'm somebody and thinking that I'm a very specific way and having like a mindset of who I know I am for sure, 100%, you know. And then I'm suddenly put into a situation where my morals change due to the environment and I kind of do things that I never thought that I would have done before. And then it kind of made me realize like I'm not any better than anybody else. And
Mhm.
it really depends on your, say everything I write, everything I create is based on pretty much nurture versus nature. Um, and just that just really interests me because a lot of people think they are something and they see like looting on TV or something like that. And they're like, I would never do that. Why are these crazy people doing this crazy stuff?
Yeah.
Well, you, with the power of empathy, you would never imagine yourself doing these things until like you can't imagine what you'd do if you were starving, or you can't imagine if, you know, you're in a competition now, everybody's doping up. Do you dope up with them, or do you lose the next competition, the next race, or whatever? It's
Yeah.
like you don't. Nobody's better than anybody else,
Yeah.
essentially. What would you do if you're put into that situation?
Yeah. I always, I always look at like people, like certain people are so black and white. And to me, even growing up from a young age, like if you are raised a certain way, you could always I always felt like I could put myself in other people's shoes. Like I always felt from a very young age, I'm like, well, if I had been raised over there, I would just be like them. I would think exactly the way they think. So
Yeah,
because I'm born here, this is just the reason I think this way. And
yeah.
I'm always shocked certain people don't seem to be able to do that.
It's difficult. It's asking you to go against nature because that's very unnatural. To it's natural for us to stay in our own groups, and that's a survival instinct. But you're asking somebody to break nature, of be like, just imagine what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes. It's a very uh, it's a very nurture thing. I believe in nurture. I was going to ask you, do you, in your writing styles, do you prefer, do you tell stories with a spine, a structure of morals, and this type of like, uh, you have like a message or something in your writing? Do you structure it that way, or do you just kind of make animation cartoons for cartoons?
Um, I think the theme and the message is gonna come out one way or another.
Hmm.
Whether you purposely from the very beginning, like whenever we were working on the movies at DreamWorks, usually they just told you right off the bat, like, okay, you're joining this movie. This is the message we're trying to tell. You know, um, but I felt like even if you did that, even if you're like had a very strong, specific moral message, the story may speak to you and show you that it wants to be something different. And even if you didn't think of one ahead of time, as you're telling it, it feels like that comes out in some way. And I I actually think about this a lot where we had one talk with Guillermo del Toro talking about his writing style. And he was talking about he opens up a book and he pretends like if he visits Paris or a city, he doesn't want to plan. He wants to just leave the hotel room, walk in a direction, just pick alleys to walk down and randomly not, oh, and then you end up at this place. Wow, this is a cool place. And that's how he wants to experience a city. So he writes his stories that way. He pretends like he's wandering the alleys of his story. So
Mm.
sometimes you know how people will get writer's block? He would just pick a random character and say, "Well, what happened to that character in third grade? This is not something in the movie. I'm just gonna spend the day like writing a story of what this character did when they were in third grade." And he's kind of meandering, and things are bubbling to the surface, and a story is kind of coming out of that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of that organic process versus Dean DeBlois gave a speech and he blocks. I actually have his paper here, like, because he gave us, like, he has a very systematic approach where he like breaks every like step down, step by step,
Mm.
like math, you know,
Yeah.
and then he beats everything out. So like How to Train Your Dragon is written from that. But if you take um, Guillermo del Toro's movie, The Pan's Labyrinth, and you were to chart out Dean's like blocking, it actually hits it the same beats like to the second.
Yeah, I feel like to do what Del Toro does, you need to have done the first step first and kind of understood that structure, and then afterwards, then you don't have to break anything down. Then you can kind of do that intuitively. I don't
Yeah.
know. Is it? That's
I
just me.
I like to do something in the middle where I block it out very quickly without a lot of pressure.
Because it changes over time,
Yeah.
right? As you start
Yeah.
to understand the characters and their motives.
Just so I have something. But then when I sit down to write, I don't feel like I have to stick to the blocking I put down. And if I get a little stuck while I'm writing, I may go back and restructure my blocking. So I kind of toggle back and forth, but I'm not too stringent with either one.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is for me, if I know that blocking really really well, like I know I need a midpoint high and it's going to come crashing down, and I know all the parts.
Hmm.
As I'm writing, those are kind of in the back of my mind, like things should be going to a crescendo and getting good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I'm
Because
kind of
you've studied it enough to where it's just an intuition, I think, or it's just
yeah
second nature, probably. Yeah.
yeah. And but I feel like if you map it too much in a structural sense,
Yeah.
you pick the worst ideas. Like you
Mm,
you pick obvious choices, whereas if you're in it, like if you're writing in it,
right.
you're finding interesting things, and you're watching the movie yourself. So you're like, oh shit, and then that happens? That's fucking
Hmm.
dope. But like if you were blocking it on the wall, you're not gonna come up with the super cool thing, you know?
Yeah. I like to create the very standard blocking, the points that it needs to hit, but then I say, okay, this is the standard way I'd have this happen. But now let's ditch that and say, what's the craziest, most absolute craziest thing that I would never even think of, that I'm scared to even put on a page? And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then that is the way that it happens. And sometimes it's a little bit over the top, but you kind of work from there. Do you did you or your writers ever study or use the Harmon Circle, story circle?
They're all aware of it, and I've
Mm,
I've seen it before. That's certain ones I have studied to the point where I have a full understanding of it, where I completely understand it. Sometimes when I've watched stuff on the Harmon Circle, I'm like, I can't internalize it yet. So because I haven't studied that particular method enough
yeah,
and tried to write enough scripts where I'm trying to use that method.
yeah. Like you were saying though, they all kind of hit the same beats essentially. If it's good writing, it all hits the same
Yeah,
beats, just in kind of different ways. But yeah,
yeah,
the Harmon Circle, I was noticing in season 2 of Kipo, I saw it specifically, and I was like, but they didn't hit this beat. They didn't hit this beat. And then I rewatched it again. I was like, God dang it, they did hit it. They hit every single beat perfect. And I was like, without these certain beats, it wouldn't have hit as hard, but it did. I think it was when I can't remember her name, Wolf, I think, gets her staff broken or something, and this was the sacrifice that they kind of had to make to move forward. I was
yeah.
like, that was good. That was good.
I think, oh God, I don't want to misquote. I feel like Bill came up with that idea, but I could be wrong. Um, and a lot of times in our writers' room, I, I think a lot of it felt like it came from an emotional place and what they want to feel for the character. So if this whole time this object had been sort of like a safety blanket or even her hood, you want to rip
Mm,
that away from them emotionally.
yeah.
Like so a lot of times things are coming from that place. Like what do we want to do to these characters emotionally?
Yeah. It was good. I liked it. Have you ever been in a fight?
Uh I've been punched and knocked out.
Oh, was it by yourself or who?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think I was playing dodgeball and I wasn't even looking, and this buddy of mine just hit me in the stomach while I was looking that way, and I just woke up on the floor later.
Whoa.
Um, I got punched in the face once. I got
Why?
I got surrounded by a group of people, and I was holding my burrito for lunch, and a dude hit me in the face.
You just want the burrito or
You know, for the most part, I never. I'm a pretty big dude. Like I'm 6'2". I'm like 224 pounds. I've always been kind of big.
Yeah.
So I think people have always been a little afraid to try because I had a buddy who was like real, very small for like he looked much younger and he could fight anybody. He was constantly getting in fights. And, and I think people just took one look at me and steered clear.
Mm. You don't think this person that punched you, they just saw like the biggest dude in the prison and wanted to show their prowess?
Well, the weird thing with that dude is he was like a close friend, and I think he thought he's being funny. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Because we weren't like we wouldn't have fought for any reason. You know?
yeah. Well, it is kind of funny, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. What about your first kiss? I mean, not related to the fighting, but did it like
Oh
a first
man.
kiss?
Oh God, can I even remember that? I feel like I was in kindergarten.
Whoa. Dang. You had your first kiss in kindergarten, you
I
think?
think so. I feel like it's the thing on the playground where you kiss somebody playing tag
Whoa.
or something.
I I never tagged with a kiss. Interesting.
Uh,
How about as a teen? Do you remember that?
let's see. God, can I even remember that?
Would your mom have freaked out?
Uh, I was very like religious until my 20s, so I didn't actually really even date much because I was so religious. But God, I can't. That should be something I remember. I also, this is crazy. So at DreamWorks, they did this thing where they drew a vial of blood and they would give you like a health screening.
Oh, okay.
And they drew a vial of blood. I got up to walk, and my last memory was, man, I wish there were some chairs to sit in. And I woke up later surrounded by what the EMT dudes. So it must have been 20 minutes. I fell back and hit my head. I spit my tooth out. So I,
I,
I had hit my head so hard, but it
what?
it it fucked up my memory. Like I'll be looking at like my brother or someone, and I'm like, fuck, what's their name? Like I have trouble, and this was years ago. So I mean, apparently it hasn't affected my work much, but like there's a lot of stuff where I'm just like, I totally can't remember that.
What? Wait, you said this was at DreamWorks?
Yeah, like maybe
At
10 years
TV?
ago.
Oh, or TV or
Like
feature? I
no, no,
guess I
back
didn't have
in
TV.
the
Wow.
but me and Chris Copeland will talk about it sometimes because he had a bike accident and it's a similar thing.
Oh,
So like stuff will be at like the tip of your tongue. It's not even at the tip of my tongue. I'm like, I don't even remember that.
wow. I haven't even hit my head that I know of, and I still can't, and I still do that. So hopefully I never have to go through that. God dang. Well, you might not want to say this on stream, so feel free not to answer. But what's the most illegal thing that you've done? Or, maybe not the most illegal thing, but
I think I I was with a buddy who had a BB gun. Again, going back to the BB gun story.
yeah,
And I
stay
was
away
so
from
pissed
those.
because he wouldn't let me touch his BB gun. He was like, "This is my BB gun. I got this. You can't touch it."
Yeah.
And we were on a balcony, and he was just shooting people with the BB gun.
Sick. Nice.
And I don't
Cool.
think it injured anybody. I think it just from that far away, it just bounced
Well, it
off
can
them.
kill a hummingbird. I know that.
Yeah. But the police came and put us in the cop car, and in
Oh,
my mind,
shit.
I was like, that dude didn't even let me use his gun. I didn't do shit.
But you would have. You're like,
I
I
don't know
would
if I
have
would have
shot
shot.
people, but I
I
didn't.
don't know if I would have shot somebody. But
Yeah.
and they wouldn't. They told our parents, they're like, look, we're just putting him in the cop car to try to scare him. But
Uh,
your kid's a hard ass. What the fuck? Like you won't even apologize.
oh, they thought you
They
weren't
thought I
like
was shit.
fessing up or whatever.
Yeah. They thought I was like lying.
Dude, yeah, that's sick. I mean, honestly, I don't even know if I believe you still. I bet you're out there. You didn't let him touch the gun. You're out there shooting people.
I'm just holding on to that story.
You got a record.
There we go. The only other thing I did was in college. Before I was 21, I was holding an empty cup that used to have alcohol in it, and they threw me in the paddy wagon with about
Sure. Used to
God,
have, yeah.
it must have been 4,000 UCSB underage students,
Wow.
and they just fill up the prison. So you're packed in this prison all night, and then still to this day, the best meal I ever ate in my life. They hand you a bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread, but you're so freaking hungry because you haven't slept all night. But then they make you go to the courthouse, and you're lined up with like hundreds of kids, and everyone comes to the front and they go, "Do you want to pay 5 grand and this will just disappear from your record, or do you
Sick.
want to try to fight this?" And every kid goes, "I'll just pay the 5 grand." It's like an assembly
Wow.
line to make money.
That's genius. I think we're in the wrong business.
I know, man. It was crazy. And then you had to go take this like drug awareness class.
Wow. So the cup used to have alcohol in it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it was in you at
It
that
did,
point.
yeah, it was, but that doesn't matter. It's just the law is if you're holding a
Oh,
red
okay.
cup, like in UC Santa Barbara, that's just the law. They can arrest you for that
Oh.
because kids were just pouring it out, and then
Mm,
they go, "No, no, come on,
I see.
you're coming with us."
Yeah, you should have brought your own cup, probably.
Yeah, yeah. I should have brought a glass.
Yeah. Dang, that's intense. So you've been in the clink.
There we go.
Yeah, dang. That's pretty cool, man.
I think that was the only time my 2 times getting arrested. Well, the
So
only time I got in trouble.
so you paid the 5 grand?
Yeah, I just paid because I'm like, I don't want this shit on my record, like for my
Yeah.
life. Like, who wants to deal with that?
I was in Indonesia. Me and my buddy were doing this cross country thing or whatever on our like mopeds that we had rented, and we were getting into a part of town, and suddenly everybody starts putting on their helmets because nobody really rides with helmets.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going on there. And then somebody was like trying to tap me, like because everybody was driving really, really close together. The traffic there super packed.
Yeah,
And then suddenly just police come out of nowhere and start funneling people off the road who don't have helmets on. And I'm like, God dang it. I didn't realize. And my buddy just kept on going. I saw him go and he had his helmet on. He was looking back at me like later, you know.
yeah,
And yeah, it was the same thing of like they just had a bunch of people there. I couldn't really speak the language. They had official papers that they probably just had printed out that morning that had like fines written on them.
mm.
And there's no way of me knowing how much the fines really are, if there is a fine even. They're just like marking up these random fines, and they're like, yeah, you need to pay this and this and this. And American bucks go a long way in Indonesia, so I was like, man, I could fight this. I could like hop on my scooter and drive away, but then they would maybe flag my passport or whatever. I don't even know.
Yeah,
So I had to pay like $200, and that was just a crazy amount of money, something like that. Yeah,
man.
but that's the only time I felt like I've been swindled, I
You got to
guess.
watch out for those scams. I remember I went to God some island, not Jamaica, but in the Caribbean somewhere. And we get off a cruise ship and we're walking, and this dude walks up and he's like, "Hey, you wanna buy some weed?" And I didn't smoke weed at the time, so I was like, "Oh, no, thanks." But then as we are walking, we kind of were watching this guy, and we realized what he was doing. He would find somebody to sell a bag to weed to, and then he'd walk over, and then the cop would come up and like arrest the person, take their money, take the bag of weed back. He'd give the bag of weed back to the drug dealer. They were just selling the same bag of weed all day long.
Nice. Wow. Now I'm trying to figure out like how can we do something like that in animation, you know? Like, that's pretty good. You've never been swindled though overseas.
Man, I've pissed my wife off by taking the wrong taxi and overpaying like double. You got to watch out anytime there's a line for taxis and someone offers you a taxi, there's probably a scam.
Yeah, and I remember that, and it's different for every country. But yeah, in Indonesia, it was as soon as you step out of the airport, there's just a crowd of people like, hey, you want a taxi? They're like fighting each other, trying to get you to get in their taxi. They're like, come over here, boss, come over here. I
Yeah.
got you, I got you. Oh, half price, you know. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. Or like, no, no, thank you. They'll chase you down too. Try to, they'll try to get you.
Yeah. I haven't been to Indonesia. Do you recommend it? Is it cool?
Uh, yeah, there's different parts, you know. My buddy and I did it for, you know, the culture and the people. So we weren't staying at like fancy hotels. I had lined up from one end of the island to the next, and we drove our bikes to different Airbnbs all along the path, and they were way off the path. Some of them hadn't even seen like a white person before in their village.
Yeah.
And this one village we went to, you had to talk like I had set up the Airbnb, but it turned out when we got there, the dude was like, he didn't speak English, but he had translated that, well, you can't stay here unless you talk to like the village leader. And we're like, oh God, who's this? And we had to go like past midnight to meet the village leader to get the blessing. And this guy was drinking his own alcohol that he had made in this huge carton. And it was like a clear alcohol. And we had to drink, you know, some with him and trading cigarettes and stuff. And it was pretty interesting. So we didn't stay at any hotels or anything like that. It was,
How old were you when you did that?
this was last January, two Januaries ago.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was really fun. It was exhausting because it would rain like at the same time every day, and we'd have to drive through the rain. And oh man, it was exhausting, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. Met a lot of really cool people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I did a trip like that through Europe, like in college, where you have no plan and you just kind of like hop on trains, see where you end up, sleep on the floor sometimes.
Yeah,
I recommend it for any young people.
for sure. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, as soon as I have a kid, I think that's what I'm gonna do. You know, just kick them out of the house and just see what they do, see what they go through.
See how they
You have a kid, right?
Yeah, she's 4.
I was wondering, do you? So I have a very specific way of thinking about nature versus nurture, but
Uh-huh.
I started to notice, you know, as soon as I would talk to other people about their kids, or even me having a dog in the first place, not that it's anything comparable, but um, my mind, I started thinking a little bit different about nature versus nurture because I thought for me, I'm 100% nurture. Like I'm thinking you can change no matter how someone is nature wise, you can change who they are by a crazy amount of nurture. But uh, but the more I look at other people's kids and other situations like this, I'm thinking, you know, it might be more of a mix. Do you have like a specific feeling about like,
I
um,
used to be the same way until about like teaching art classes, maybe after like 5 years.
mm,
I started to notice that there really are people who the drawing part of their brain is incredible, and they could just soak. They might be awful at drawing, but they could soak things up and learn.
mm,
And then there were certain people that like that maybe they had a different part of their brain that was they could do that with, but with art, it just was more difficult for them to learn.
yeah,
So that made me kind of change my opinion because I used to think like, oh, anybody could do anything. You just sit down and learn it, right?
hmm,
Um, but now I kind of have an opinion that people have strengths, people have weaknesses that are definitely natural. Um, with the art thing, I feel like almost anybody could get to a professional working level with a lot of hard work. But like when you look in the industry, there's very few people that are just that kind of top tier talent where you're like, how the hell do they do that? And a lot of
yeah,
times it's like there's something natural in that where you're just like, I don't know if no matter how hard I worked, I don't know if I could do that.
yeah. And still, a part of me wants to think that um, through like genetics or through your genes and stuff. These are things that are passed down through nurture, and that's what nature is. It's nothing. I mean, that it's nothing but nurture from the very beginning.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's a whole different thing. But
but you can't pass down certain things like
that's what I was
I,
thinking
I
too.
want
But
I want to say like neurological. I'm trying to think of the proper term because like my family has like slight Asperger's, so we're all like when I went to engineering school and I didn't have to study and I could do math like very fast, but I could never spell anything. So like and I don't think that's something that I think that's definitely something that gets passed down, you know. Um,
yeah,
so there's certain things like uh, I don't know, like depression or whatever it is that seem to be passed down.
yeah. And then some other cultures, believe in passing or living other people's lives in a sense, like multiple lives, through uh, multiple past lives kind of passed down. And I'm starting to kind of believe in that or try to break it down and understand it in a very physical way. Because, like, I can't really understand computers. Like, they seem like magic to me, but it's nothing but physical things. It's
Mm,
all about physical things that exist. And I'm thinking the brain is kind of in a similar way.
yeah,
It's based on physical things. It's just a micro.
yeah. It's a trip. Like I think we went to the moon when a calculator was the size of a room,
Mm,
right? Like because when I was a mechanical engineer, we learned about all mechanical processes, and you could get to the moon with purely just mechanical things, like without computers and stuff. Like it's such a trip. Like it's just physical moving parts, you know.
yeah,
Um, but even with the computer, it's just the binary like 0 and 1 and all that shit.
yeah. It's pretty bananas. I feel like
I'm sure they'll build a robotic brain at some point.
right. Uh, yeah. Do you So when we were talking about morals and stuff and structure within your stories, you still feel like that's something that you don't really jump into an episode or a show with that in mind as much. You just kind of you like to do building characters first and then that comes out of it.
I definitely start by I you know it all goes back to kind of your training for me. So like I kind of came through that training at DreamWorks where a lot of times you're writing scenes.
Mm.
And what's the purpose of writing that scene? Well, at the end of the week or the end of the 2 weeks, it's almost like doing a stand-up set where you pitch your scene to a room and you're basically trying to make the room laugh. So, or you're trying to make the room cry, you're trying to make the room
Feel something, yeah.
feel something, you're trying to impact the room. So it became very performative. So it
Mm.
became, you almost forgot about the fact that you're making a movie. And you thought about it, oh, I'm doing my stand-up set. I'm doing my 5 minutes, my 10 minutes, whatever. And you were just working towards that pitch, and you would pitch it live to the room, and so years of that cultivated this sort of, in my mind, an entertainment first kind of a method. So
Yeah.
I always I always entertain myself first, and I found if I was cracking up or I was having a good time, the audience would. So that's definitely the first place. Is this entertaining to me? And I have methods that I found I could get the most entertainment out of people. So I found if I had very distinct voices of characters, it became really easy to write scenes. So
Are these pulled from your childhood or I mean, like you said, all this is coming from your training, but all of these voices, are they from stories that you've studied growing up or from stuff that actually happened to you, emotions that you've experienced?
Well, I think for me, the very base foundation where I start is that if every single character I have like an archetype for them. So like when I did
Mm.
Uh, Kipo was just from New Girl. Dave was just he was just Danny DeVito from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Benson was
Yeah.
my buddy Isaiah from the skate park. So each character, like it could be like, oh, this character is like my mom, you know, or
Hmm.
this character is so and so. But I always have a very strong. Or Wolf was just Mad Max, you know,
Uh,
but it's in a 10-year-old girl's body. So I knew from years of boarding, I knew if I did that, if I plugged in a very strong archetype, and again, it can be people you know, it can be people from your child, or it could be like a famous person.
hmm.
I knew I could write a scene very easily. Like I
Right.
knew I could write a very entertaining scene. Everybody would be speaking in ways that felt unique. Everyone would have like an angle, you know.
It's
Um,
probably easier to pitch that way too, right? For people to understand, like, oh, okay, Mad Max in a little girl's body. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's pretty good. And then the stories and morals and stuff come from these characters.
yeah, and then um, uh, the next place I always just kind of jumped along the process of how we made these movies. So like, well, there's got to be like an inciting incident. There's got to be a character before the journey. There's got to be a want they want. There's got to be an underlying need that's fighting against their want. Like Shrek, he wanted to be alone, but he needed to let people in. So like all
Yeah,
those classic things, I just like jump in and try to make things entertaining. And
it's intuitive by this point because of all your training.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think because I was raised with so much focus on quote unquote morals that I'm almost a little standoffish on like
Yeah, if
trying.
it's something's preaching at you the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I'm standoffish on like trying to be too woke. I'm standoffish on trying to have very strong like um, morals or very strong like messaging.
right.
It almost makes me kind of like uh, okay, I grew up with such a focus on that, and it ended up being wrong.
So
That
who are
it,
you to preach?
yeah, it
Yeah,
almost makes me just, hey, let's have some fun and entertain, and like, I mean, yeah, I kind of feel a certain way about some things, like with Kipo, we felt a certain way about Trump having the build the wall mantra. Like,
hmm,
I was like, okay, I get that there's Republicans, and honestly, I kind of treat politics the same way I treat religions. I have my own personal belief, but I definitely believe, like a religion, people have a bubble of facts, and they have a bubble of facts that's different from mine. And so, like, I'm not trying to like if they had my bubble of facts, they would believe the same way I believe. You know,
yeah.
they're very clearly in a different place. So like do you it becomes tricky, I feel, if you start trying to
For
yell
sure.
or preach, because it's like, well, first you kind of have to get in and relate to them as a human, you know.
Yeah. Well, what about your writers? I mean, did you have these conversations? Did they want to have specific messages that they wanted to tell, and you were like, let's kind of chill, or did
No,
you say
oh
just
no, I never backed off on anything
because
if people had a passionate like
the
message they
main thing
wanted.
between Kipo and Wolf was that the whole thing was just of them. Uh, Mad Max didn't have faith in humanity, right? And Kipo was like, you need to open up, and vice versa. Like they had to learn from both from each other.
Yeah, but again, when I say like I don't want to go too far into preaching,
Yeah.
those felt like if you stepped away from preaching and you just look at the emotions of characters and how do we grow, how do we learn, like
It's never
how,
one-sided, right?
how do we become better humans? Like I almost feel like you could do all of that without um, trying to force people to believe a certain way,
Yeah, it's never one-sided, it feels like, because it's all about empathy, right? They
Yeah,
both characters have something to learn from the other.
exactly.
It's not black and white. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just like this is the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, um, I mean, we had a black and white with when you see Amelia with her dad, and you see that she actually genuinely loved her brother, and she was willing to kill somebody she loved because of her belief system. I, I feel like you'd want to say, man, is there any way to reach that person? Is there any way to change that
Hmm.
belief system? Because look what she ended up doing because of this,
Yeah.
like,
Do the ends
horrible
justify
belief.
the means?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you'd still want to get through to that person.
That's good because so with streaming, with YouTube and the current technology, I feel like the audiences are getting, I mean, we're getting really smart. The kids are getting really smart these days. So you can't just have a black and white situation.
Yeah,
And almost we're developing so fast that you almost can't do I mean, we can't do the same thing again. If you make a second Kipo or a second show, you can't say the same thing in the same way, because people are going to be expecting that because we're so fast these days. The
yeah,
audience is so smart. You don't even need intros anymore. It almost cuts to inciting incidents just straight in the very beginning. It's
yeah.
like the audience is getting so smart and so fast that we need to take the expectations that we've just set up in the past like 5 years and now subvert.
I'd almost say there's something happening right now in these big streaming services is they are trying to make money at the end of the day, and a lot of them are trying to move into emerging markets, and a lot of them are saying words like trust the algorithm.
Mm.
So you'll put a show like Kipo out and go, oh, that didn't help us move into this market we wanted to get into. Okay, get rid of that show. What's the show that is helping us get into this market? Okay, let's make more shows like that. And you may end up seeing a thing where what is the widest, broadest, I want to say vanilla, but you know what I'm saying?
It's true. It's the same on YouTube right now.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So on YouTube, you almost have to go vanilla and broad to break through the top.
Well, it's difficult because like I agree with you and I agree with artists. I am an artist. I'm on the ground floor of this thing, but also I'm my own executive. So I really see the potential of this. I'm not trying to make content for my fans anymore. I'm trying to make content for everybody so I can hit the big numbers. Like it's really tough to say this, but like I don't like I personally care about my fans and
Yeah,
the content that I have made, and I really want to cater to them and grow as a community. But my executive side is like, screw all these people. Like I need to capture everybody, and then I can start to create uh, this niche thing with everybody that I've captured with a boss baby or whatever. And it's
yeah,
always a battle between these two sides of like, I want to capture everybody, which then you start chasing numbers. It's not healthy, and it might work for the first year or two, but it's not healthy
yeah.
because it's the internet right now, and we can create niches. We can create massive communities of a niche. But yeah, that's the struggle I'm constantly faced with, and I find a balance.
Yeah, it's I'd never thought about that within the artist, like straddling those two. Because I've only dealt with it from like executives or studios coming to you and saying, "Hey, rather than making what you made, what if you made this other kind of thing?" You know,
Yeah.
and having to make a decision of like, do I really want to do that?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not sure if you know of Jazza, but he's a YouTuber. He's like one of the biggest art YouTubers, and it's when he started, kind of up to this point, is for kids, and that's why he has millions of views, and he's just a massive crowd, and he's got a community, and a lot of it's for younger audiences. And I was kind of confused when I first started YouTube because I thought that I was going to do that too, but my tone was not for kids. It's for I'm finding out now through my analytics. It's a lot of middle-aged dudes are watching, and 16 and up. Most not even that many teens, but it's like, oh God, that's my market. I didn't know. Okay, well, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But it's not it goes over kids' head. They're a little bit too young to be. They're like, oh, this guy's mean or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's a little
But
bit difficult.
like our numbers on Kipo, I don't think we got a lot of kids. We got more people in their 20s.
Yeah,
Um,
but you want to do more stuff like that, right?
dude, I would love it if, and I'm sure you want to do this too, if we could open up like a young adult market where you could go a little darker, you could go a little bit more adult. I mean, like they're doing in Japan.
Now's the time. Now's
Yeah.
the time to do it. I mean, it's between now and the next 10 years, somebody's going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, might as well be us. Yeah, I want to do things more cinematic. I think the audiences, it's not going to hit the craziest big numbers at first, but there's an audience for it and there's a niche for it. And
Yeah.
people are starving for that because they're getting smart. They're getting really smart. And
Yeah.
kids are freaking smart these days. And even kids who aren't,
Well, like my 4-year-old loves The Mandalorian. She's like, oh, I want to watch the shark again. Like there's giant monsters. She's totally into it.
wow.
And it's like you
There you
got
go.
4-year-olds competing with that kind of content and like, I don't know, Baby Shark.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially now because they're going to start growing up with this stuff. And you can have a tone that is adult and young adult, but you don't
Yeah.
need to show sex scenes. You don't need to show blood and gore. It can just be like serious character development in a serious, sometimes serious tone.
Yeah.
But you don't need all that extra stuff. If somebody slept with somebody or something, you don't have to show that. You show the wake up next morning or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they even did it in Hunger Games as a YA, and they have like some violence or whatever. But or even the later Harry Potter movies. I think we were talking about this before, but someone's gonna have to do it sort of independent because the big studios are just not gonna do it.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's a cool time. Like I remember when I was younger and Pixar kind of took the mantle for making content, and that's just disappeared. There is no current like Pixar. There's no current like who's the up and coming game changer, you know?
Yeah,
So it's kind of the perfect time for somebody to swoop in and do that. And it could be through YA, you know? The,
sure.
the reason everybody fails is they go, who was the last person to do something great? Let's try to copy that.
Yeah.
And it just goes on. It just goes on and on.
Do you read fantasy or do you read books? YA books.
I haven't in a while.
Okay. How do you feel about because there's plenty of YA IPs that I read and that I love, and a lot of studios are kind of backing off from them. How do you feel about taking some of those and creating shows or even like a short or something from existing IPs? Did you want to do something like that, or you want to do completely your own stuff, create your own
I mean,
audience?
I kind of got the bug from doing Kipo where it's like, oh man, this is what it's like to make something from scratch.
Yeah.
It's hard to, because I was doing that for a little while. It's hard to be like 100% invested when you know like what it's like to do it from scratch. Yeah,
Yeah. You want to work on your own stuff.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I I I think I'm in that camp too. But there are plenty of good stuff to start with if you wanted to do other IPs
Yeah.
that exist. But yeah, there's nothing like doing your own story. And especially for you, the like how you feel, like whenever you're doing that, how much effort and work you're going to put in, and all the people working with you that are putting in their own ideas. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, I think this IG live might end
Hmm.
in a sec because they
Okay.
tap out at an hour. But this was fun, man. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, man, it was sick. It was tight.
All right. And everybody who joined us in the comments, thanks for joining.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you later, man.
All right. Later,
Okay.
bro. Bye
See ya.
bye.